Oh man. And the Spirit comes before me in Bernie's word, which I will have to listen to again. Drink deeply. Drink as deeply as you can. And then in the word that Yale bought, even if it makes no sense, follow. That's what she said. And I thought, well, that picks off this word really well. So, true to form, I've printed some notes, which you mustn't read. You can do whatever you like. I've, I've put little dotted lines on so you can make paper airplanes out of them if that's what you choose to do. That's not true, is it? Yeah, you fold them at the obvious place. I'll tell you where. Yeah, I was joking. I was joking about the paper airplanes. You can do that with it if you like. So, giving way. I'd like to introduce us today to the practice of giving way. This is easy. This one is easy, okay? It's the whole of the Beatitudes rolled into one. It took me 14 weeks to teach the Beatitudes, 14 essays, and inspired by Richard when he once said, just step out of the way. This encapsulates the whole thing. So this is easy. Well, it's simple, actually. It's simple, but it might not be easy. So I'd like to introduce us to the practice of giving way. I'd also like to propose that Jesus' calling on our lives is to become more and more like him. People often ask the thing, what is the calling on my life? And is it, am I called to be this or that, or do this or that? But Jesus' calling, I'd like to propose that Jesus' calling is to become more and more like him. What's he like? The one who is able to embrace life in all circumstances. Anybody want that? The one who is able to embrace life in all circumstances, to live life in all its fullness, and to bring the life of God to all things. There are three things that Jesus is like. To embrace life in all circumstances, to live life in all its fullness, and to bring the life of God to all things. Is that a good enough call? I think it probably is. I think the hymn writer has it. And see if this hymn writer is talking about Jesus' call on our lives to become more like him. See if you can see that. Breathe on me, breath of God, and fill me with life anew, that I may love as you have loved and do as you would do. Is that the likeness? Breathe on me, breath of God, until my heart is pure, until my will is one with yours, to do and to endure. Can you see? Call to the likeness. Breathe on me, breath of God, so shall I never die, but to live with you the perfect life of your eternity. Can you see the call? The call to become like him. The theology is beautiful. The hymn writer doesn't say, live this life anew by trying harder to think and act as Jesus would. He says we do it by the breath of God. The breath of God. So you don't have to try harder. You just look for the breath of God. It's all in the encounter. It's all in the encounter. This breath of God, which transforms us to become more like Jesus. So it's the breath of God, not the breath of Gary. It's not my breath that will save me. And it's not your breath that will save you, it's the breath of God. So, Jesus is great good news. Yeah, Jesus is great good news that we would become more like him. And as a result of that, we'd live the promised life. Remember the promised land? We'd live the promised life in all its fullness, in all circumstances. Is it possible? And overflow God's kind of life. Is it possible? Oh, yes. Now, Jesus. Oh, I should have clicked that. Jesus shows us simply how to become more like him in the story of the prodigal son. This is very easy to understand. I haven't found it particularly hard to do. Yeah? But there might be something in Yale's word here when she says, sometimes it makes no sense, but the Spirit says, come. Yeah. So the father in the story of the prodigal is one who is able to embrace life in all circumstances. He's able to live life in its fullness and is able to bring the life of God to all things. Who does that sound like? Jesus. It's him. So Jesus is describing himself here as the Father and is saying, come. Come to the altar. Come. This is the one we are to become like. And Jesus uses the actions of the Father in the story to show us how. That's the question always. What do I do? What can I do? How do I do this? How do I become like him? I think we will read it. I think we will read through it. Probably got time for that. See if you can see it. The one who embraces life in all circumstances, lives life in its fullness, and brings the life of God into all things. See if you can spot those three things. If I can find it. Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here am I starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. bring the fatted calf, kill it, let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Yeah. So let's get straight to it. Let's have a look at what this characteristic is of the Father that we must follow in order to become like him. So the younger son, he believes that he can make life happen without his father. He can make life happen without God, yeah? He can make it all without Jesus. He can make his life happen without his father. I guess he believes that if he doesn't make it happen, it won't happen. He's us. He's you and he's me. He believes he can make his life happen without his father. Separation from God, seeing ourselves as separate from God, is the worst thing that we can do. And he believes that if he doesn't make it happen, then it won't happen. So he's us. Now this drives him. It drives him to take on the full burden of making life happen, to take it into his hands completely. He's us. Do you feel that burden some days? If I don't do this, then it won't happen. Jesus is sort of saying to us, this is the start point. This is the start point. Because naturally, apparently, psychologists say that we believe that we must make life happen for us and for ours, for our families. Now, we'll either grab and push to make it happen. Nobody in here would do that, I'm sure. And the people on the live stream too. Hi. Yeah, we'll either grab and push to make life happen, or we might work endlessly, courageously, and often blindly to make life happen. Or we might be fearful that we just can't make life happen. And these are all the same human condition. It's a life without the Father, the separate self, it's called. So how does the Father in the story engage with his Son? Remember, this is a journey Jesus is taking us on to become less like the Son and more like the Father. That's simply it. We're not doing anything else but this today. Yeah? So, what's the Father like? Does the Father agree with what's happening? Bearing in mind that he's just lost half of his entire estate and he's still alive. And Jesus is pitching this here because it's culturally the most shocking thing that could happen for a son to wish his father dead. Because he's trying to inherit before his father's death. So Jesus is pitching it deep here. So does the Father agree with what's happening? Does he want it? Does he condone it? Does he accept it? The answer is no to all of these, by the way, in case you're... Or you can have your own answer. Does he accept it? How about this? Does he battle against it? Does he battle against what's happening? Does he fight and lose that battle? We often hear about people losing the battle against sickness. And I wonder at that, when our battle is not against flesh and blood. Does he battle and lose the battle? Does he just give in to what's happening with the boy? Yeah, he's asked for half of the estate. Is he just saying, oh, go on then? Oh, go on then, you might as well. It's coming to you anyway, you might as well have it now. Does he give in as helpless? There's nothing I can do about it, you might as well have it. Or does he give up as hopeless? This is all us, by the way. These are, just in case it missed you, these are all the ways that we might engage with the circumstances of our everyday lives. This is how we may do it. Do we agree with what's going on? Do we want it? Do we condone it? Do we accept it? Do we battle against our circumstances? Do we just give in? Or do we give up? No. The Father didn't do any of those things. He doesn't battle. He doesn't give in. He doesn't give up. He gives way. He gives way. He gives way to make way for the way. Jesus is the way. And as he gives way, I can almost sense Jesus saying, "Here I am. Here I am." I said at the beginning, I'd introduce us to the power of giving way. And in giving way, the Father gives way. He gives way to the power of God in his circumstances. It's simple, isn't it? The principle of giving way. You can see the result. You can see the result in how the Son eventually follows his Father. And he follows his Father in exactly the same way. See, with the Son, only in giving way to his own circumstances did he find his way home. Way. Where did he get that seed from? His Father. His Father is releasing the life of God into his Son by giving way. The seed goes in the Son, and eventually the Son comes to his senses and gives way. What does he give way to? His sin. I've sinned against you, and I've sinned against God. He gives way. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's one thing for everything. So, the Father is one who can embrace life in all circumstances. Do you see him do it? The circumstances of the Son, wanting half the estate, the shame of it, the loss. He embraces it. How on earth did he do that? He's the one who embraces life in all circumstances. He lives life in all its fullness. Can you see him? The party, he's come back, all that sort of stuff. And he brings the life of God into all things. He brought the life of God into his Son, back into the household. That's Jesus, the one who we are to become like. And the person we are to become like becomes like that by giving way. Will you try it? Will you try the Jesus way to become more like him? Now, I'd encourage you at this point not to think of really difficult examples as to why this wouldn't work. Because there are lots. There are lots. I'd like you to be open to the Spirit of God saying, this is happening in your life and it's time to give way. Just the one thing that is happening for you, it's time to give way, to practice giving way. Apparently in the Benedictine, I think it's the Benedictine monasteries, they had cells of 7 monks, and one for each day of the week. And for one day of the week, each monk had to give way to everything and everybody, every discussion, every argument, everything they were going to do next. They practiced giving way to get it into their heart and their soul. And I remember Eugene Peterson was talking to a Mother Superior, and he was saying to her how difficult it is in the world to just live the life of God and find our way through. And he said, it must be so much easier in a convent. And she says, you wouldn't believe it. Some of these nuns can be real bitches. So no, there's no point in running off to the convent, you know. There's a problem with a convent and a monastery. They got people in them, people like us. So how does that work for me? Have I got time for that? Just how does that work for me? I can't tell you what to do. I can invite you to give way to the circumstances, to people. How does that work for me? Well, one way it's working for me in learning to give way has been to give myself permission to be infirm where I am infirm. Yeah? To give myself permission to be infirm where I am infirm, to give way to my infirmity. Not to deny it, not to battle onward to defeat it. Try denying a broken leg by walking on it. Or you could give way to it and have it plastered up. Try battling onwards against anxiety. That doesn't work. Yeah? So to give way to my infirmity, not to deny or battle, not giving up or giving into it as an excuse for my poor behavior, but by giving way to the reality of an infirmity, giving way to make way for God to move, to heal and restore. Because giving way is giving way. As I give way to the infirmity, I open the window, the door, and Jesus steps in and begins to heal. I heard something yesterday that our troubles, our infirmities, the tear in the soul where the Spirit comes in. Yeah? So giving way to my infirmities. This has revealed to me why sometimes I behave like I do. Bit of an awakening. But it has resulted in me not expecting too much of myself in certain circumstances. It's relieved me from having to just try harder. So giving way is making way for a better kind of life. I'm not trying so hard to make life happen when clearly I can't. See, having become more conscious of why I behave the way I do, I'm now engaging with the circumstances of life in a more life-giving way than I was before. Perhaps I'm becoming more like Jesus, engaging with my life as Jesus would if he were I, living as Matthew says, freely and lightly. Giving way is not a weak thing to do. It takes faith. It wasn't a weak thing for the Father, was it, to do? It takes faith. It takes facing up to things the way they really are, like he did in this story. But facing up to things, but not taking on the burden to make life happen. Yeah? Just like the Father in the story, just like Jesus. The one we're called to become like, the great call on our lives. But giving way takes faith. Jesus calls those who learn to give way the meek. He calls us the meek as we learn to give way. And the meek, according to Jesus, inherit the earth. They inherit what they were previously fighting for or had given up on. How about that? They inherit what they were previously pushing and fighting for, or they inherit what they'd given up on. They inherit the earth. So I'm learning to give way in my days like the Father did, fulfilling Jesus' call on my life to become more like him. I'm learning to give way in other ways too. To give way to the people in my life, to make way for God to move in their lives. Try giving way to children. You think, oh my goodness. Well, in this church, we have always given way to children. When children have walked up, well, I've been talking, whatever, the most important thing to do was to stoop down and listen to them. Giving way to make way for God to move in their lives. Perhaps I'm learning also sometimes to give way to the circumstances I find myself in rather than fighting for a way through or giving up. I know that every time I give way, I find a new way to engage. Now, this is interesting. When I give way to my circumstances, I find a way that was previously unknown to me, completely unknown. That's the Spirit of God. And it enables me to embrace life in all circumstances, to live life in all its fullness, to fulfill the call of God on my life, to live like this. So, would you like to stand? We've got a few minutes, probably. So breathe on us, breath of God. Breathe on us, breath of God. Fill us with life anew. By the breath of God. If the Spirit nudges you now, there is something, there will be something that you're ready. The Spirit calls to do something, to give way. Don't question it. Don't try and understand it in your heart and your mind. Give way. Come, Lord. It's up to you. Give way. The Lord spoke before I spoke. Drink deeply. Drink as deep as you can, even though it doesn't make sense. That was the other word. Drink deeply. Come. Move. Give way to make way for the King. Come. Just let him come. Let him come. Open this door. I just saw a picture of a door and it was stuck. No, doors sometimes stick. It was stuck. I sense the Spirit saying this door of giving way is stuck. It's so unused. Open the door, Lord, by the breath of God. And come. Just let him come. Yeah. Yeah. You know, the more you give way, the deeper he comes. The more you give way, the deeper it comes, the more you realize how much more there is to give way. Come. Yes, Lord. Yeah. Yes. The miracle in our day, the children are quiet. Why are they quiet? Why? Come, Lord. Yes. Yes. Yes, Lord. Yeah, let the healing begin. Let the healing begin, oh God. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Let the battling end. Let the battle end, the struggle end, oh God. Don't think what's the other side of it. If you think you can see what's the other side of this, then it's you and not God. You can't see. It's a new way. Come, Lord. Come. Father, I don't want to see what is the other side of this when I give way. I don't want to predict it. I don't want to ask for it because I want what you've got. That which is unknown to me completely. Come, Lord. Come. Yeah. 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 I sense this word. Where on earth do I begin? Well, the answer is you don't begin on earth. But by the breath of God. Yes, Lord. Yes.